Drunk son comes home, humiliates his own mother and tells her to shut up, thinking they were alone. But when the father shows up, he does this. Kenneth was never an easy man. From a young age, he was explosive, unpredictable, and unable to handle frustrations. Any setback was enough for him to lose control. He kept grudges in silence, letting them pile up like live embers inside his chest. His unstable temperament was inherited from his father, Matthew, a man with a curt way of speaking, hands marked by hard labor, and a stern gaze. Matthew, however, knew how to control himself. When he needed to discipline, he used physical force firmly, without cruelty, just enough to make his authority clear. Kenneth never forgot those actions. He accepted them quietly, but accumulated resentment. Despite his toughness, Matthew was a present father. He worked hard all his life, supported the household with dignity, and did what he could within the limits he knew. Michelle, his wife, was the opposite. Always calm, affectionate, and patient, she had a soft voice that soothed and gentle gestures that held the household together in tense moments. She was the one who kept the peace among the silences and prevented the days from exploding. Kenneth's childhood wasn't marked by material deprivation. He had a home, food, clothes, and school. But there was no space to be heard. Constant pressure and his father's emotional control left scars. He felt watched, pressured, and unable to express himself. The anger he felt toward Matthew had no outlet. He kept it all inside, silent. In his youth, he met Susan, whom he married and with whom he had a son. For a while, he believed that would bring stability, but his emotional instability and episodes of aggression ended up pushing Susan away. Exhausted, she left, taking their son. The separation broke him completely, and from then on, things got much worse. He became even more aggressive, even toward his own parents. Arguments were constant. Whenever he went too far, Matthew disciplined him, as he had done before, never cruelly, but firmly. And even as an adult, Kenneth swallowed each correction with silent resentment, as if they were new insults. Unemployed, he began drinking every day, sinking into a routine of self-destruction. He lost friends, lost the few temporary jobs he could still get, and started living between bars, alleys, and his parents' house. He refused any kind of help. He never admitted fault. To him, others' rejection was just another reason to rebel. Every time someone said no to him, it increased the anger he carried, and that anger was all he had left. That hot, stifling day when the air seemed to weigh on his shoulders like an old guilt, Kenneth repeated the familiar path. The grey sky looked like a warning, but all he saw was his own rage. Staggering, his eyes red and sunken, he arrived at his parents' house, dragging his feet, his sweaty shirt clinging to his body, breath sour from having exchanged any affection for cheap bottles. His hands trembled, but not from fear. It was fury keeping his mind alive, even if his body barely responded. He pushed the gate hard, not caring about the noise, crossed the yard like he owned the place, and entered without knocking, as he always did. "Where are you, Mom?" Kenneth shouted, voice heavy and aggressive, already looking around for something to break if he didn't find what he wanted. "Where the hell are you?" "I'm here, Kenneth," Michelle said, her voice almost fading, as if she wanted to avoid this moment from forming. She appeared at the kitchen doorway, shoulders slumped, holding the dish towel between her fingers like it was a thread of dignity. Her face was tired and her eyes moist. Kenneth took 2 unsteady steps toward her, his body swaying as if the anger sustained what the alcohol had destroyed. "Finally showing up," he said sarcastically. "Why hide? Ashamed of what you gave birth to?" Michelle took a deep breath without moving. "I was washing the dishes." "Washing dishes," he repeated, laughing without humor. "That's all you know how to do, wash plates and look at me with that pitying face." "It's not pity, Kenneth," she answered softly. "It's sadness." "Sadness?" He spat the word like poison. You don't know anything about sadness. You never had to swallow everything silently like I did. You were always the saint, right? The good mother. But you never defended me from that damn old man. Your father did what he thought was right, she said, her voice breaking. He did what he knew how to do. Sure, always defending him, Kenneth shot back, raising his voice. Always silent, always kneeling in front of him, never had the courage to say a word. Michelle took a step back, slow, without fear, but as if every word pushed him against her. I was trying to keep the house peaceful, Kenneth, that's all. Peace? What peace, Mom? I grew up in a graveyard, with a father who beat me and a mother who hid behind the curtain. You were loved, she said softly, almost a whisper. Lies, he shouted, stepping closer. Loved my ass. You let me rot. Kenneth, please, shut up, he roared, eyes flashing. Shut that mouth, woman. You have no right to say anything anymore. You let me break and now you want to preach? Go to hell. Michelle put her hand to her chest as if every word was a punch. There was no fear in her eyes, only pain. A deep, silent pain from someone who knew her son was no longer the same, or maybe never had been. She tried to stay strong, but tears started to gather. Are you crying now? Kenneth continued, gesturing wildly. Why cry? For me, too late. Neither you nor that old man did anything for me, left me in this world like a dog. She took another step back, and he followed. His face twisted, a mix of fury and frustration. His breathing was heavy, sweat dripped from his forehead, and the shirt stuck to his body smelled strongly of booze and neglect. He raised his arm, not to hit, but as if measuring the space he occupied. You're pathetic, you know that? He said, staring at her closely. Always were. Always took everything silently. No courage, just stand there with that saintly face. I just wanted you to have peace, Kenneth, she said, her voice fading. Peace my ass, he shouted, spitting the words. You made me this. And at that moment, at that final shout, the front door slammed open. Matthew came in from the street and stopped when he saw the scene. His wife withdrawn, eyes full of tears, and his son yelling, body leaning forward like a predator about to attack. Matthew's face changed. He said nothing at first, just closed the door heavily and looked at his son with a gaze mixing shock, anger, and a shame that cut the air. What do you think you're doing? He asked, voice low, hard as stone. Kenneth turned, staggering, still panting. This is none of your business, old man. Matthew walked toward him with slow, sure steps. Have you lost your mind? You shut up too, Kenneth shouted, now fearless. Gonna hit me again, is that it? Like when I was a kid? Come on, you old bastard. Matthew stopped in front of him and looked over his son's shoulder at the woman crying in the corner of the room. When he turned back to Kenneth, there was something there beyond anger. It was a breaking point. You humiliated your mother, Matthew said quietly, but with a coldness that made the silence heavy. Inside our home, after everything she endured. She deserved it, Kenneth spat. Her and you. Matthew said nothing. He just stepped forward without warning and threw the first punch, fast, straight to the jaw. Kenneth staggered, tried to hit back, but his reflexes failed him. The second hit landed in his stomach. The third, again in his face. Michelle screamed, ran to them. Matthew, please stop! But Matthew didn't listen. He struck with the force of someone trying to fix an irreversible mistake, like punishing his own guilt. Kenneth fell, tried to get up, but slipped on his own sweat and blood. Gasped, moaned. Get up, coward, Matthew yelled. Do now what you did to your mother. Go, talk to her like that again. Kenneth couldn't respond. He tried just to breathe. His eyes cloudy, consciousness failing. Matthew stopped then, fists still clenched, chest heaving. He turned his back and left the room without another word. Michelle fell to her knees beside her son, eyes full of tears, trying to touch his bruised face. My son, she said, barely catching her breath. Stay still, please. Just rest. but Kenneth spat beside her, disgusted. "Get your hand off me, old bitch." "Kenneth, you'll pay for this," he whispered. "I swear." He tried to get up. His body failed him. He leaned against the wall, limping, eyes full of blood and fury. He staggered to the door, opened it hard, and left. The door slammed behind him with force, and the stifling night swallowed Kenneth as if it was already waiting for him. Limping, dirty, bleeding from the corner of his mouth, he walked away from his parents' house without looking back. His body ached, but it was his head that throbbed most intensely. Every step was guided by a confused feeling. Anger, humiliation, abandonment, all mixed in a whirlwind that gave no rest. The beating he took in front of his mother, inside the house where he grew up, didn't wake him. It only reinforced his certainty. He was a victim of everyone. Victim of the harsh father, the passive mother, the ungrateful ex-wife, and mainly victim of a life that owed him more. In the following weeks, he disappeared from the streets he used to roam. He hid in filthy boarding houses, in stuffy rooms where the smell of mold competed with spilled booze on the floor. He slept on thin mattresses, surrounded by cockroaches, sharing the space with distant sounds of fights and sirens. But he didn't complain. That was all that was left, and in his delirium of rage, he told himself he was still on top, that it was all part of a bigger plan. In one of those boarding houses, he met Mark, an older man with yellowed eyes and a cigarette-rasped voice. He was a salesman in good times and a loan shark in bad. Kenneth approached with the face of someone who had nothing left to lose. "I need some money," Kenneth said, eyes fixed on the wall. "Everyone does," Mark replied, without taking his eyes off the old TV in the corner. "The question is what you're going to do for it." "I'll pay," Kenneth said. "Not now, but I'll pay." "You don't even have proper shoes," Mark mocked. "How are you going to pay?" "I'll figure it out," Kenneth insisted. "Just give me the money." Mark measured him for a few seconds, then let out a dry laugh and pulled a folded bill from his pocket. "This is a test. If you don't come back, I'll find you. And if I find you, I'll break you." Kenneth said nothing, took the money, and left. With what he got, he bought cheap booze and food, but his mind was already elsewhere. A fixed idea started to form. Even if confused, he would make his parents pay, not with direct violence, but with fear, with anguish, with the same despair he said he felt since childhood. "They'll understand what it means to live cornered," he repeated to himself between sips and sobs, alone in rooms where no one listened. He started walking around the neighborhood of his childhood home, never during the day, only at night, hidden between walls, shadows of trees, forgotten alleys. He watched the times, the movements, mentally noted when the living room lights went off, when Michelle went to the yard, when Matthew left with the car. For hours, he stood across the street, just watching. He thought about every detail as if building a just revenge. One early morning, he managed to get close to the back door. He knew where the spare keys were. He no longer felt like a son. He felt like an intruder. He took one of the copies calmly, as if he had all the time in the world. He went back to the boarding house and spent hours looking at the key, spinning it between his fingers. "They will feel it," he muttered, "every second of what they made me live." One night, while drunkenly wandering a busy street, he saw a distracted delivery guy talking on his phone. The man set the device on the motorcycle while arranging his backpack. Kenneth approached unnoticed, grabbed the phone, and vanished into the crowd. With the new device in hand, he created an anonymous number and started sending messages to his mother. "Did you forget me? I'm close. Will you sleep peacefully tonight?" Michelle read the messages silently, her heart racing. She showed them to Matthew, who responded curtly, "Must be a mistake." But she knew. Every word smelled like her son. The pain those phrases caused left no doubt. The following days were marked by more messages. Some came in the afternoon, others in the middle of the night. Kenneth always wrote short, direct, like someone who knew exactly where to hit. I heard you crying last night. Your garden is neglected. Does he still sleep in the living room watching TV? Michelle deleted some, but read all. Matthew started leaving a knife near the bed. He said nothing, but his gaze became harder, more alert. One morning, when Matthew went out to buy bread, he found the car scratched from end to end. Words scribbled with a key on the side. Trash, coward, damn old man. Matthew looked, read everything without saying a word, and went back inside. It was him, Michelle said quietly. I know, her husband replied. Now he's crossed the line. Kenneth watched from afar, from the top of a construction house across the street, his eyes fixed, unblinking. He saw his father face the car, saw his mother sitting on the porch, hands on her lap, body still. He smiled. The next night, he entered the house, used the key, was quick. He knew where the cameras and sensors were, took the phone from his pocket, went up to his parents' bedroom, and took a photo. Their bed, the portraits on the wall, the hallway light on. He left as he came, leaving no trace. The next day, the photo arrived on Michelle's phone. No text, no signature, just the image. She took a few seconds to understand what she was seeing. When she noticed the angle, the height, she fell into the couch. He came in, she whispered. Matthew came from the kitchen, took the phone from her hands, looked silently. He came in, Michelle repeated, now crying. He was here, Matthew. The old man didn't respond, sat beside his wife and stayed there, staring at the wall. His breathing was slow, but his eyes burned. The fear was no longer hidden. The house was quieter than ever, but it wasn't the old silence, made of tiredness and routine. It was the silence of someone waiting for the worst. Matthew started checking locks every night, checked windows, gates, outside lights, slept little, woke up at every sound. There was no doubt about what would happen. He knew Kenneth would come back. It was just a matter of time. And this time he wouldn't be fooled again. It was on a grey morning, while drinking coffee silently, that Matthew looked at his wife and said, I'm going to talk to the police. Michelle raised her eyes, surprised. Are you sure? He crossed the line, he replied without hesitation. I should have done this earlier. She didn't respond immediately, just nodded slowly and went back to stirring her tea with trembling hands. Matthew went to the police station, told everything. The anonymous messages, the scratches on the car, the photo taken inside the house. Took Michelle's phone, showed the images, gave the name, history, and background. The older officer took notes silently with a heavy look. Is he dangerous? The officer finally asked. He's my son, Matthew said, but if he shows up again, I don't want to risk anything anymore. Days of tense waiting followed. Routine became vigil. The front lights stayed on longer. Michelle avoided going out alone. Matthew slept with the phone nearby, body always alert. They knew, they felt it, and they were right. The following week's early morning, Kenneth came back. The street was deserted, the wind warm, the sky heavy with dense clouds. He wore a dirty t-shirt, worn pants, and carried a long kitchen knife with a chipped handle. The idea was simple. Enter, scare, show he could. He didn't want to kill. He told himself it was only so they would feel what he had felt his whole life. Fear, helplessness, impotence. He wanted to invade like someone demanding answers. He approached from the side of the house where the fence was lower, jumped over without difficulty, walked through the shadows to the back door, took the key he still kept. When he turned the lock, his heart raced, not from guilt, from anticipation. He pushed the door slowly. The inside of the house was dark, silent. Kenneth entered with slow steps, almost soundless, held the knife firmly in his right hand, passed the hallway, looked at the living room. The lights were off. The TV was off. The air was heavy, stuffy. He felt sweat run down his back. He stepped forward a few more paces until he heard a voice. "I knew you'd come." The voice came out of the darkness like a blade. Kenneth froze. Matthew was sitting in the armchair in a dark corner of the room, hands on his knees. He didn't look surprised. He was awake, waiting. "You're awake?" Kenneth muttered, more by reflex than real surprise. "I am," Matthew replied. "Been awake for days." Kenneth squeezed the knife tighter. "I didn't come to kill anyone." "Didn't you?" Matthew said calmly. "What are you holding in your hand? A present?" "I just came to show you you're no better than me." "With a knife?" Matthew stood up slowly. "You think anyone listens to you like that?" "Shut up, old man," Kenneth said, stepping forward. "You shut my mouth for years. Now you'll listen." Matthew didn't back down, took 2 steps forward as well. They stood a few feet apart. The knife still gleamed between Kenneth's fingers, but his eyes were already trembling. "You've destroyed everything already," Matthew said. "What more do you want? I want you to feel what I felt." "I did feel it, Kenneth," his father replied firmly. "When you humiliated your mother, I felt it. When you threatened the house where you were raised, I felt it. But now, enough." Kenneth lunged forward, teeth clenched, but Matthew was faster. He dodged the armed arm, grabbed his son's wrist, and twisted it hard. The knife fell to the floor with a sharp clack. In seconds, the old man immobilized him, his body still strong and firm, as if the years had waited for this moment. "Let go, damn it!" Kenneth shouted, trying to break free. "It's over," Matthew said, breathing heavily. "It's over, Kenneth." With the help of a belt, he tied his son's arms. Michelle appeared at the bedroom door, frightened, silent. "Call the police," her husband said. "Now." The patrol arrived in less than 20 minutes. They found Kenneth on the living room floor, wrists tied, knife on the floor. The officers lifted him without much ceremony. He still shouted, cursed, called his father a coward and his mother a traitor. Michelle just cried, standing against the wall. He was arrested on the spot. Charges, breaking and entering, threats, attempted assault, stalking. During the transport, Kenneth kept yelling. No one answered. The trial happened weeks later. Few showed up for him, none of his old friends. Susan gave no sign. Michelle went, sat in front, listened silently. Didn't say a word, just cried quietly. Matthew didn't show, said he had seen enough. Kenneth arrived handcuffed, tried to look proud, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion. When the judge read the sentence, he showed no reaction. Years in a closed regime. He was transferred to a penitentiary far away, far from the city, far from everything. In the first months, no one visited him, no letters, no calls. He tried to keep the violent posture, but the system was harsher than he imagined. He got beaten, was isolated, lost sleep, began to feel what it really meant to be invisible. Almost a year later, the first letter arrived. It came in a simple envelope, handwritten. "Kenneth, I hope you're taking care of yourself, your mother." No accusations, no advice, just presence. He tore up the letter, threw it away. But he remembered it for days. The next month, another arrived. Then another. All short. All calm. All signed. Michelle. He started saving them. One day he replied, just one sentence, "I'm still here." It was the beginning of a new silence, less aggressive, more tired. Matthew never visited him, not once. He took care of his wife, the house, the small tasks. He took up fishing, fixing clocks, watering plants. Sometimes he spent hours silent, staring at the yard. "Won't you write to him?" Michelle asked once. "No," he answered. "He needs to go through this alone." Kenneth now has a graying beard, a thinner body, scars on his arms. He writes letters he never sends, thinks about the past, the mistakes. He still doesn't know if one day he will be something different from what he was. But he writes. At his parents' house, time passed. The gate is now locked every night. The living room window, which was once broken, has been fixed. On Michelle's bedside table, next to a lit candle, lie all of her son's letters. None forgotten, all read. When someone asks about him, she just says, "He's healing." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.